Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Made for More podcast. Today I am joined by an exceptional guest and a wonderful woman. It is Molly Benjamin from Ladies Finance Club. Hello, Molly, and welcome to the show.
Hi, Ali. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
I am very excited about this episode. I am a long-time listener to Ladies Finance Club and a long-time fan of yours, and I think it would be really good to share some of your expertise and what's going on right now with our audience. But before we get too far into that, tell me a little bit more about you. Where did you come from and where are you going?
Okay, so I am originally a Queenslander, and I guess my whole journey started. I was working in a corporate job in the world of finance, and I was an absolute hot mess when it came to my finances. I was spending every cent I earned. I had no control over my spending. I thought property was like this dream in the future that was never going to happen. And if I got a letter from my super fund, I would stick it straight in the bin. That's the kind of hot mess I was.
Yeah.
And so I went on this real money journey, a few tears, well, quite a lot of tears. And it wasn't probably, gosh, for like a good 10 years later, when until I was living in London, that I finally got my money act together.
Yeah.
And when I did, I thought, let's take some women on the journey as well. Because I reckon if I don't know this stuff, a whole bunch of other women don't know this stuff. It turns out I was right. So we've had around 70,000 women through Ladies Finance Club, through our courses,
Amazing.
programs, corporate workshops. And our mission is very simple. It's to help make Aussie women rich. Yeah. And so that's the, I guess, the story in a nutshell.
Amazing. I love this so much. I also started in finance, and I think there's one of those things where you think you know more than what you actually do, because I came
Yeah.
up with some very creative ideas to help myself buy my first house. And yes, just because you can doesn't mean you should. So, Ladies Finance Club has seen, did you say 70,000 women through the programs? That is amazing. Congratulations. That's a remarkable feat. And also, 70,000 women now have a deeper understanding of their financial status and where they're up to. Now, what I understand around Ladies Finance Club, after you started recognizing perhaps you and your friends were money clueless, is what was the moment that you really realized that this was going to be the mission for you? You said you're in London. What was kind of the pinnacle?
Yeah.
What was the aha moment when you thought, oh, jeepers, creepers, we need to do something about this?
Yeah, look, there was probably this one moment, and I was in a supermarket, Sainsbury's, which is like the Coles Woolworths in the UK. And I literally couldn't afford jam because I had spent all my money. And I had to text a girlfriend and be like, hey, can you like send me £20 because I have no money? And it was all through mismanagement. And I
Yeah.
was earning, I was working for a bank, which is pretty embarrassing, but I was earning pretty okay money, but I had nothing, like zero to show for it. And I was like, this is so stressful. I am done. No more.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I started educating myself, reading books. And that's where the concept of Ladies Finance Club came up. My dad had a finance club with his mates.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, he's got an investment club. And one of my girlfriends was like, let's start a book club. And I was like, no, let's start a money club. So a few pizzas, bottles of Prosecco. Would get a friend who worked in finance in to come talk to us in my living room. And that's kind of where it all began. And what I noticed was women were just so hungry for this information. A lot of us had never been taught it at school. We might not have been given, well, a lot of us haven't been given good examples via our parents, and it's not their fault. They didn't know either. No one taught them. And so for a lot of us, we're just a bit clueless with how to grow our money. We're very good at earning money and spending money, but how to manage it and grow it, not so much.
Yeah, I love that. And I love a good OG story, origination story that always starts on a couch. I think either garages or couches are the beginning, the beginnings of something amazing. And we can never really underestimate the power of bringing people together to go, hey, let's either learn together or solve a problem. When you first started these, getting people in to talk to your group of girlfriends, what were kind of the key topics that you think really interested that group. But what are you seeing now? People are really hungry for, women are hungry for now when it comes to
You know
funding.
what? It's the same content. So
Yeah.
it is about how do I manage my cash flow, my budget. I know a
Hmm.
lot of people hate the B word, so spending plan, whatever you want to call it. How do I invest? So how do I actually grow my money?
Hmm.
And then what the hell is going on with my super slash pension? So in the UK, it was pension. In Australia, we have the superannuation. And just such a yeah, a small understanding of how that system actually works. And to be honest, it's pretty confusing. So fair enough. And then how do I set myself up? Like, so what's my first starting points? And that's kind of like what that's our bread and butter. That's what we teach. That's what
Mm.
we help educate about. And a lot of it, like especially with super, the rules are slightly changing all the time. So it is like an ongoing learning journey.
Yes, I love this. And just as you're listing that off, I'm like, oh, hang on, I want to know a little bit more about this as well. I also like that you've rebranded budget to spending plan because I think budget's got a bit of bad rap, doesn't it? But spending
It
plan kind of
does.
seems like far more sophisticated.
Yes, and I think with a spending plan is where a budget can feel very restrictive. Like I'm going to have to budget out the fund. Whereas a spending plan, this is like, how are you choosing to spend your money? You're going to spend it anyway. So this is just actually being really mindful and you deciding where it goes, not wondering where it went.
Yes, yes. Now, I've got a quick question for you, and I think this comes up probably hand in hand with the idea of the budget and the millennials and the lattes. Like, can we just squash the coffee latte myth
Yeah.
around that's how you're going to save for your next house?
Oh my gosh. So we actually did an Instagram post on this yesterday,
Oh,
and it was
did you?
like, how many avocados on toast would you need to save for a house deposit? And it was like something crazy, like 22,000
Right,
avocados on toast. So
right.
I think that myth, that is definitely like a myth. I feel like it's a massive challenge for people to get on the property ladder. Cost of living, wage growth is not rising fast. So you do have to be,
Mm,
I think, a little creative. Some people are in that very fortunate position where they are relying on the bank of mum and dad, or and when we say bank of mum and dad, it's not necessarily mum and dad giving money, but actually guaranteeing their home for a
yep.
certain amount of that deposit. Also, looking at what government schemes are out there. The 5% scheme just came in recently, which again comes with a whole lot of other things.
Yeah.
But yes, so oh, I've forgotten the question now.
The question was around myth busting, but I think you've
Yeah,
gone on to go, yep, we're 22,000 avocados on toast. Probably
yeah.
if someone is consuming 22,000 avocados on toast, I think that's probably a different conversation.
Yeah. But there is also like watch the pennies and the pounds will follow. So there's absolutely it's good to be aware of those everyday spendings because that does add up over time. But
Yeah.
I think the yeah, I think the argument of like, do we just need to, do our own nails and not have those lattes out? I think it's bigger than that.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And I think when you're talking about 22,000, it kind of puts it in context. It's never going out for your avo on toast for the next, I don't know, however many years that works out to, but a lot of years. So you touched a little bit on getting into property, getting on that property ladder and how much that's changed. You know, parents now being and having the opportunity for some people to guarantor as well as some of the schemes that are coming in. What
Yeah.
about some of the other finance? I guess the whole wheel of finance. You touched briefly on superannuation. What do you see as some of the stumbling blocks, potentially the myths that need busting when it comes to super?
Yeah, to super. So I think there's just a lot of well, not even misinformation, but there's this big knowledge gaps when it
Yeah,
comes to
yeah,
super. Like Vanguard just recently did a survey. I was in their offices when they announced all this research. And, the average Australian thinks they can retire at 65, whereas actually 60. So there's a lot of information. And they also think, they're going to need 100K plus in retirement to, as a yearly spend, where it's actually more around the 57,000 mark. So
ah,
actually, that's how much they would spend. And again, a lot of people think like, oh, they'll move house, they'll downsize, but a lot of them actually aren't doing that. So I think
ah,
what I always say to this, so there's definitely a lot of myths when it comes to retirement, but I always say to women, like, there's a couple of things you want to just check. To make sure you are like on track for a comfortable retirement, because sometimes we can put these things aside and keep our head in the sand a little bit because we don't really get it. I always say just think about retirement as like, your future holiday fund.
Yeah.
And you don't want to get to that holiday and there be no money in that fund. And so a really good place to start is just Google Super Detective. It's a free tool online and you just pop in your age and it will tell you how much super you should have for your age group. And then there's always ways to top it up. Also, if you're potentially taking a bit of time off work, there's spousal contributions, there's government co-contributions. You can actually, if you haven't topped up your super and reached that threshold, so this year it's 30,000, the year before it was 30,000, the year before that was around 27,500. But if you haven't hit those thresholds, you can actually go back and top them up back 5 years, which is a great option for some people. If you're getting a big lump sum, you can carry it forward up to 3 years. So there's so many different levers you actually have to get back on top of your super salary sacrificing. It's just actually getting a little bit curious. And the last thing I'll just say on super as well, which a lot of people don't know, is when you pay for your super, you're part of the super fund. You're part of that membership. You're paying a membership fee as part of your fees, which
Yeah.
gives you access to free financial advice. So call up your super fund and access the free financial advice. So many people don't know this. Make sure you are in the right fund. If you've never chosen what fund you're in, you'll be in a default fund, which is generally a balance fund. If you're not retiring anytime soon, like that probably shouldn't be a balance. It probably should be a high growth, not financial advice.
Yeah.
Seek independent advice. But it's time to get curious about it because having spoken to thousands and thousands and thousands of women about this, none of them say, I wish I just waited a bit longer before I got onto this. I wish
Yeah.
I just waited an extra 5 years, 10 years. They're all like, I wish I had started earlier.
Yes, I can
Rant over.
100%. No, good rant. I think it's important because it is one of those things. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The next best time is right now. And interesting that you said just checking on like the type of plan that you're on. Again, not financial advice, and definitely not my wheelhouse. But years ago, I just went in and had a little fiddle and went into like a growth or I don't know, like the big one,
High
which
growth.
was
Yep. Yep.
high growth. And my husband had very similar to me, similar super funds, and he didn't adjust his, and mine just kind of whoop went
Yeah.
really surpassed his. So,
Yeah.
and I didn't really
It
pay
can
attention.
literally be the difference between $100,000 extra at retirement. So
Yes.
that's why, yeah, I always say to people like, don't focus on the avocado toast. Focus on those bigger financial decisions that are going to have a much bigger impact on your life.
Yeah. Just thinking more about those decisions and the financial impact. I think there's a lot of, financial anxiety. There's a lot of avoidance that's, really hidden, I think, in today's era. What kind of strategies do you recommend for any leaders that are looking to create a culture where money conversations are safe, are transparent, transparent and empowering and not fear-based? Do you think there's a place for that in leadership in the workplace, or is it, still very taboo of keeping those kind of conversations separate?
No, I think we need to be talking about it more in the workplace. I think there's always a little bit of apprehension from leaders because they're like, oh, what if it leads into a salary negotiation
Uh-huh.
conversation, or what if it goes down that channel? But some of the best leaders I've worked with, they've really explained to their teams what super is, how it works. They've really encouraged them to invest. And we do a lot of corporate workshops. So leaders will actually get us in to their organizations and we will present on a range of different financial topics. And whenever companies do that, I'm always like, hats off to them because they get it.
Yeah.
They understand the impact of we talk about mental well-being, physical well-being, but financial well-being as well. And like I don't have the stats in front of me, but like it's like X number of days employees will actually take off work because they're feeling financially stressed and they
Wow.
just need some time off to get on top of their bills, to get on top of their household yeah, like what's going on there. And likewise with just the stress it causes, it's just another thing on top of a very busy life we have. So the fact that these companies are getting us in to actually go, hey, here's a bunch of tools, resources, this is how you do it, this is what this is who you can check in with. I think that's a great move.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's really important, particularly when we t start talking about the full spectrum of well-being, which I think is probably going to get a lot more attention in 2026. But you touched on a really interesting point there where you were saying, here's the resources, go for it. I think, as you mentioned,
Yeah.
leaders are probably shy away from it a little bit because of salary, but also because there's this constant caveat of like, not financial advice. I don't want to tell someone what to do versus, hey, here's a few ideas and a few
Yeah.
resources that you might want to consider to look into that could be beneficial, and recognizing that that's helpful,
Yeah,
not
because
harmful.
exactly. Because the thing with finance is you don't need to make these big dramatic life decisions, changes.
Yeah.
Actually, what good finance, like financial well-being is small, consistent changes and tweaks. And a lot of us don't know what we don't know. So,
Mm.
we've been doing some work with Mamma Mia, the women's network, and now they've started their own like little ladies finance club where they get together like once a month and they're actually the employees actually talk about money. But we've led them off to a really good start, like having done a session on super, on investing, on like a general money makeover, on buying property. So yeah, it's great to see like companies like that really taking the lead with their staff.
I think, as you mentioned right at the beginning, people are really thirsty for this information because we don't know what we don't know and going, oh, hang on a minute, let's get a little bit more curious about this. And if Mamma Mia are doing their own spin-off, then there's definitely opportunities for that to happen in any organization or
Yeah,
association.
absolutely. And there's even little things like, did you know you can negotiate on your bills at least once a year? And if you're not, you definitely should be. And people are like,
Oh,
I didn't know that was a thing. I'm like, 100% it's a thing. So we'll give them a script. We'll like explain how they can do that, how to use, how to look up what the competitor's doing, use that as evidence.
ah,
And people are doing that for their home loans. They're doing it for their phone plans. They're doing it. The big one I always find is private health insurance. A lot of us never negotiate on that. And so we've been working with this group and we've sent about 450 women to them. And as a
ah,
total, we've helped them save with over $350,000 just by
wow.
switching providers because they've been with the same provider for 20 years and they're getting ripped off, quite frankly.
Yes, wow. And it is those little things that have the big impact and ongoing. I love that. You mentioned about the spending plan, which we'll talk a little bit more about later.
Yeah.
You mentioned about getting into property. What
Yeah.
about that third piece that we talk about around investing?
Yeah.
Can you, I think and I'm speaking, this is me, this is like
Yeah.
the source of one. Can you share a little bit around, with investing? I think outside of super, it seems
Yeah.
very scary. We hear a lot
Yes.
around Bitcoin. I
Yeah.
know, I know years ago I was like, oh, I should start investing, and I downloaded like a little Raise account.
Yeah.
What are we sort of seeing now as investment opportunities? What does investing actually look like in
Yeah.
this era, in the modern world, and for modern
Yeah.
women?
So I just want to bust a big myth. I hear a lot of people, a couple of myths about investing. So a lot of people are like, you need thousands of dollars to start investing. No, you can
Yeah.
literally get started with a dollar.
A
You
dollar.
have to, the other one is you have to know what companies you're buying. Actually, there's products out there. We don't even teach about investing into individual companies anymore because that is so risky. Because, think of Blockbuster, think of those
Yeah.
companies.
Yeah.
What if you put your money into all that company? It goes down. So there's actually products out there. You might have heard of them before: ETFs, exchange traded funds, or index funds. So I always say, picture a favorite box of chocolates. You've got lots of different chocolates in the one box.
Yeah.
That's the same as ETFs or index funds. You've got lots of different companies in the one unit. So when you buy that unit, you're getting exposure to hundreds, sometimes thousands of different companies. So you're really spreading your risk, you're diversifying, and you can do that. You can literally buy those products. Like if you can online shop, you can online invest. It is a
Ah.
very similar process. So you mentioned Raise, so that's a micro investing app. So they're great places to start. I always say to get your toes, like dip your toes in the water. Comes like Pocket, Spaceship, they're also similar apps called micro investing. So let's say you get a coffee, it's $4.50 or round it up to $5. Put that 50 cents into an already diversified portfolio, which pretty much just means it's made up of international companies, Australian companies,
Yeah.
a bit of property, and probably a little bit of gold. And you choose kind of what risk level you want that to be. And then if you're wanting to invest into ETFs or exchange traded funds, you can still do it through those platforms because that's what they'll be ultimately investing in, ETFs.
Hmm.
Do it via a broker. And just to give a quick analogy on this one, like if you're going to buy a lipstick, you could buy it from Sephora or Mecca or MAC. It's the same thing. If you're going to buy an ETF, like the top 300 companies in Australia, you could buy that from Comsec, from Perla, from, gosh, there's heaps out there, Spaceship, from NabTrade. There's so many.
Wow.
So it doesn't matter which platform you use. It's just you're buying the same thing at the end of the day.
I love that. I've never thought about it from like a Mecca Sephora lipstick. So good.
Yeah.
That makes so much more sense to me now. So
Right?
that's for what do you call it? ETF, exchanged traded
Traded funds.
funds
Yeah.
that people
And
that
if
are
you,
looking into, is that shares?
yeah, so if you look
Yep.
at the word exchange, so you buy and sell them on the exchange. In
Hmm.
Australia, the main one is the ASX,
Yep.
but you can do it all on your phone these days. So exchange traded, you buy and sell, although we're always long-term holders. That's very important. Like,
Yes.
don't bother investing if you are going to plan on doing it for shorter than 3 years. Just keep it in a high interest savings account.
Right. Yep.
And then exchange traded funds. So it's your money pulled together with hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of other people's money, and it's invested into a range of different companies.
Right. So that's definitely the long game.
That is the long game. And that's the thing. People go, they also think like, I'm going to get rich overnight, or
Yep.
this happened to a friend. I think, especially with crypto, we hear so many of the winning stories, but we don't hear the losing stories because people don't share those stories. But I can assure you, it is majority of the people. So you've just got to realize if you are investing into cryptocurrency, it is extremely volatile. If we think of keeping your money in cash as yoga and investing it into an ETF as like maybe running, I would say crypto is like base jumping.
Oh,
Like
no,
that's how
thank you.
risky it is.
No, I'm terrified of heights. We won't be doing that. So one thing that I know that you talk about a lot is really around that financial independence and how that equals, choice and freedom,
Yeah.
which I think ultimately most people are looking for.
Yeah.
And particularly women, there's some pretty staggering statistics around there around homelessness and
Yeah.
that type of thing, which isn't hitting mainstream. I think mainstream knowledge. But for any of our listeners or those that are watching on the channel, what's your kind of advice? What's your take on aligning those personal financial goals along with that bigger purpose and, leadership vision for some of our leaders so that money can really become I guess, a gateway to that freedom, to that choice.
Yeah, I think it's actually working out what does your wealthy life look like? What does your rich life
Mm,
look like?
mhm,
Because that's
mhm.
going to be different for everyone. And like actually getting really clear on, I know we do this really well in business and in the corporate world. We know our KPIs, we know
Yeah.
what we're working towards, but a lot of us aren't doing it for our money. And so you've got to sit down and think about like, I'm spending all this time earning this money. What do I
Yeah.
want to do with it? Where does it align with my life? And if you have a partner, you've got to get on the same page.
Yeah.
Like, if you're working on completely different goals or you don't even have goals, I just saw some research before we jumped on, and it's actually the couples who have aligned financial goals are like, it's something so crazy high. It's like 84% more likely to be in a happy marriage. So
Oh,
just
right.
like getting, yeah, I'll fact check that stat, but it was so high. Like they are, it was from research by Dave Ramsey, who's an American finance expert. But yeah, so you want to get really aligned on what is it I'm wanting to do with my money and what does my rich life look like? And this really changes for people. Sometimes it's like spending more time with my kids, picking them up from school, but other
Yeah.
people, it's like flying business class and not checking my bank account. So it really depends on what does that look like for you and how do you then achieve that, your version of financial freedom.
Yes, I love that you've given those couple of examples there. As you know, I've got like a million children, and being able to pick them pick them up from school is certainly a strategic choice
Yeah.
that I've made because, there's only this very short season that we're in, but there have been times when that has not been the money goal. And I think probably when they get a little bit older, the money goal will shift again. But interesting, I'm very intrigued about this statistic around the how money and financial well-being equates to
Yeah.
happiness in partnership. And it
Yeah.
makes sense, obviously, but how often are we not talking about that because it's a very much a taboo topic and it causes a lot of stress
Yes.
and anxiety and all these things. What have you got to say about that?
Oh,
Sorry, I'm
I was just
talking.
gonna say because I just hopped off a podcast recording with a couple and they're like pin-up couple goals, like as far as like money and talking about it. They do a yearly like let's plan for our goals. They do a quarterly check-in and
Yep.
then they do a quick weekly 15-minute like how are we going with it? Where are we at? And
Yep.
I'm like, wow, like you guys are gonna be so aligned, so on the same page when it comes to your finances if you're having those regular date nights and checking in.
Yes, I can attest to that. My husband and I have regular annual planning sessions on money and then quarterly as well. So it
Oh,
does
love
it
it.
does help. They don't always go well, but that's all part that's all part of it. So when we're talking about, I'm going to go back now to the budget rebranded, the spending plan.
Yeah.
Some people are going, look, I'm kind of living paycheck to paycheck. Where do I even start? You alluded to being able to start investing with a dollar, but if people are going, oof, I don't even think I can, well, maybe a
Yeah.
dollar, but I don't even think I can get there. Where's a starting block for people who are going, yep, I need to get serious about money now?
Yeah. So the starting point is always like we need to be putting money aside in an emergency fund,
Hmm.
an OMG fund. And, I'll have this conversation with women in their 30s, 40s, 50s, even their 60s, and they've never set this up. They don't
Yep.
have money like
Yeah.
just there, like
Yep.
they've never saved. So if that's you, that's okay. But like, you can take action now. And we're all on a different journey. Some of us have come through divorces, separations, we've been widowed, we've just never met anyone, we just maybe haven't even done it, we've just been putting it off, we haven't been earning enough, whatever the reason. That is okay. It's just a matter of getting started where you're at now. So emergency fund is always that beginner's point.
Oh,
So having that 3 to 6 months worth of expenses in a high interest bank account in your own name, and that is your emergency fund. That is your safety net. But Ali, do you want me to just talk you through like I guess, the cash flow kind of model we
yes, that
at
would be
Lady Finance
amazing.
Club?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So this is by a guy called Glenn James, who also has a fantastic podcast, Money, Money, Money. So shout out to him. And this is the model he came up with that I teach because I'm like, it's the best one out there that I've found.
I love it.
And and the idea is that all your money comes into a cash hub. And this is with your like main bank. So for example, I bank with ING and NAB. So this would all come into my NAB. And I've called it my cash hub. And this is
Yeah.
for those kind of like monthly, yearly, quarterly expenses.
Right.
I then have another bank account, and this is my weekly spend. I have a weekly automated transfer every Monday. And that money in my weekly transfer is for food, fuel, going out, entertainment, food, fuel, yeah, groceries, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that's what I know I can spend each week guilt free. That's my weekly spend money.
Yep.
And then so that's with a separate bank. So my main cash hub's with NAB. Let's say that other one is with ING.
Right.
And
Yep.
then off the other cash hub, we've got emergency fund. So money going into our emergency fund. Once you've hit that 3 months worth of expenses, you can decide whether you want 6 months.
Yep.
And that's personal. I think some people love having 6 months. I know I meet people who love to have a year's. I'm like, I think that's an overkill, but 3 to 6 months worth of expenses. And then you've got money going into like gifts, holidays, clothes account. Again, a weekly transfer going into that one. And then the next bit is where I think this is such an important one. You have your different goals you're working towards, and they're different
Mm.
accounts, and you label them. So let's say it's holiday to France 2026. It might be house renovations 2027. And then it might just be something like extra money for investing, whatever your goals are. And so it's weekly automated. And so that's generally like, that's a great way to set up your bank accounts. It comes with a great spreadsheet where you can actually work out how much you need to be putting into each account. But that is a system that I see works the best for our members.
I love that. And when people are going, okay, that sounds good, do you split it off as a percentage? Like
So
allocate like a, yeah, sorry, allocate like a percentage to your emergency fund or just a dollar figure, whatever works for them.
yeah, so generally it's a dollar figure and it has a spreadsheet to go with. So once you've
Yeah,
put in
great.
all your expenses, it actually spits out the correct amount. So it's like, okay, you need to be putting this
Ah,
much in your weekly spend.
yep,
You're putting this much into your like your clothes, Christmas, holidays.
yep.
And you can work out how much do I need to be putting in my emergency fund. And then you've got it will say like, okay, you've got $150 left over. How do you want to break that into your different goals?
I love
And then
it.
you set that up. But it's I think what's great is especially for people who have like who get bonuses or their kind of income's quite lumpy, you just have it all going into the cash hub and then you're just paying yourself weekly.
Yeah.
And it's much
Love.
easier to manage weekly than monthly.
And we'll link to, is it Glenn James, did you say, as well,
Yeah.
so that people can have a listen to that as well
Yeah.
as obviously your own podcast. I love that idea of getting it all set up and having it across different accounts. So then you're not confused and you're not going, oh, hang on, which does have I allocated the right amount of money for this or for that? If you could go back in time, what would be your top five tips that you wish, you wish people knew, you wish women knew, or perhaps that you wish people were doing right now? What's your top five tips?
Well, the first one is always invest. So,
Invest.
like, I can assure you and promise you, it's not as complicated as you think it is. If you're listening, you're like, oh, that feels really scary. It is like, just has to be part of adulting. We brush our teeth, we invest. So I definitely say, even if it's like $20 a week or $20 a month, just get into that rhythm.
Yep.
I'd also say, take the opportunity to get curious about your super now. I always used to be like, that's a future Molly problem. I'm tackling Tinder, not my retirement. But
Ah,
actually, if you set it up right now, you know where your money's invested. It's in
yeah.
that high growth. You know what's going on. You know your fees. That's going to put you in a great stead going forward, and it doesn't take very long to do. And then you can also work out if you want to be putting, salary sacrificing a little bit extra. A lot of the corporates will allow you to salary sacrifice.
Yeah.
And even just doing an extra 5% every paycheck, that can equate to like 50 to 100K more at retirement, depending on how your funds performed. The other thing I would also say is wills. I know we don't want to think about our own death,
Oh,
but like
yes.
52% of Aussies don't have wills. And like, think of it this way, like no matter what happens, like someone's going to decide and you can decide or the government can decide. And I think
Right.
you yourself to decide.
Yeah.
So make sure that you just kind of do that estate plan. You put those powers of attorney in place. Again, we can connect you with amazing women who do this stuff if you don't know who to go to. And then your insurances as well. Like we are our biggest earner.
Hmm.
For us, we will be our biggest asset. And, think of yourself like an ATM that pays money every month. Like
Right.
you want to protect that, right? But for so many of us, we are underinsured or we don't have enough insurance. So definitely taking out that time. Again, I know it can feel like a lot on an already very busy to-do list, especially for women. There's a big mental load already going on. But this is so important. Of course, we never want to have to use insurances, but if we do, we
Yeah.
want to have the right ones in place and the right amount. So check in with that income protection. If you have it in your super, it's a great starting point. It's
Yep.
probably not going to be enough. So checking in those different insurances, and have you got enough cover?
Amazing. I love that. And I think it's important how you mentioned, just get into the investing and, you brush your teeth. It's time for adulting. It's so
Yeah.
good. I'm actually very guilty on the wheels, so I'm off to go and research that myself in a minute. It's been on the to-do
Yeah.
list for about since I became a mum, so
We
nearly.
actually have a fantastic lady we can
Ah,
connect you with,
yes,
Ally, and
yes,
she's
please.
based in Queensland too.
Oh, perfect, perfect. But yes, it's one of those things that's on the back burner. And now that you've said it, I'm like, oh gosh, it's been on there for quite a number of years. I loved having our chat today, Molly. Is there anything else that you wanted to share with the group? Where do you hang out? Where can people find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are on the Instagram a lot. So at Ladies Finance Club. We are also at ladiesfinanceclub.com. We do a range of free sessions and paid sessions. We do lots of free kind of intro to investing masterclasses just to try and get more women involved. And then obviously we have our paid programs and courses for people who want to kind of fast track it. But all I would say is like, look after your money now, and money will look after you later. It will be your best friend if you let it. It will take you on, the holidays, the adventures, but then it will also have your back during the hard times, the tough times when you need it the most. So don't ghost money.
Don't go to money. I love it. Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for sharing your expertise. We'll put all of your links into the show notes. And in the meantime, what is it? Emergency fund investing super.
Yeah, get on
Love
to
it. Thank
it.
you. Thanks, Molly.